All right, get ready to have your mind blown because today we're diving into a study that uh, might just rewrite everything we thought we knew about dopamine. And it might even explain some of your cravings.
You know how we always hear dopamine is the feel-good chemical, tied to pleasure and motivation?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, get ready for a plot twist because it turns out dopamine might be way more involved in our memories than we ever imagined.
You're telling me this isn't just about that rush you get from a tasty treat or acing a level in like your favorite game.
Exactly. This new research out of Michigan State University, published in Communications Biology, suggests dopamine actually helps shape how we remember those rewarding experiences, even changing how we value them over time.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So give me the rundown. What did these scientists actually do?
So they designed this clever experiment with mice and sweet treats. Imagine you ring a bell, and every time the mice hear it, they know a sugary reward is coming.
Classic conditioning. I bet there's a twist, right?
And there is. After the mice recall the memory of the food, triggered by the bell, the researchers introduce a temporary feeling of discomfort. Not from the food itself, just a bit of yuckiness. Then things get really interesting.
Okay, so they're linking a negative feeling to the memory of the reward, not to the actual act of eating it. That's sneaky.
Exactly. And the result, the mice start avoiding the treat later on, even though they were never actually sickened by it. It's like their brains rewrote the value of that sweet reward based on a bad memory.
Hold on, so you're telling me just the memory of the food paired with a bad feeling was enough to change their behavior? That's wild. It's like when I had food poisoning from some dodgy shellfish years ago, I still can't even look at mussels without feeling queasy.
It's a similar idea, but what's fascinating here is how this flips our understanding of dopamine. The researchers use cutting-edge techniques to actually label and reactivate the specific brain cells involved when those mice recalled the sweet treat. They found dopamine plays a crucial role in actively decreasing the value we assign to certain memories.
So dopamine isn't just about seeking pleasure. It's also about diminishing the allure of certain rewards based on our experiences. It's almost like a memory editor, tweaking and refining our past pleasures. Is that what's going on here?
You're getting it. And to make sure this wasn't just a fluke, they even used computational modeling, essentially creating a simulation of this memory process. And their model backed up what they saw in the mice. This is pretty groundbreaking stuff. It suggests dopamine is involved in a much deeper level of memory processing than we previously thought.
This is blowing my mind. And to think this is just one study. What other memories could dopamine be reshaping without us even realizing it?
That's the million-dollar question, and that's exactly what researchers are trying to figure out.
Well, before we spiral into an existential crisis about the nature of reality, let's unpack exactly how the researchers figured all of this out. The brain is a pretty complex place to be poking around in.
You're not wrong. But they use some pretty incredible techniques to zero in on dopamine's role in this whole process. It's called mediated devaluation, and it's all about manipulating how the brain links memories and rewards.
Mediated devaluation. Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about how this works.
Imagine those mice again. They've learned that the bell means a sweet treat is coming. But instead of making them sick from the food, the researchers introduce that discomfort while the mice are simply recalling the memory of the treat, triggered by that bell.
Clever. They're essentially sneaking in a negative feeling right when the memory is being accessed. What happens next?
Well, thanks to their ability to label specific brain cells, the researchers could observe exactly what was happening when those mice recalled the memory. By manipulating the dopamine levels in those cells, they could directly see how it impacted the mice's later behavior.
So they weren't just observing a correlation. They were able to establish causation. Pretty impressive.
It is. And what's even more fascinating is that this level of detailed memory processing involving dopamine is a completely new discovery. We used to think dopamine was mostly about predicting rewards and responding to surprises, but now we're seeing it actively involved in reshaping our memories after the fact.
So dopamine isn't just a simple pleasure signal. It's like a sophisticated memory sculptor, constantly refining how we remember our past rewards. This changes everything.
Exactly. This opens up so many new questions about how our brains work, and it has some pretty major implications for understanding things like addiction and even mental health conditions where negative thought patterns can become really ingrained.
Okay, my head is spinning. We need to dive deeper into all of this. But first, I'm curious about those techniques you mentioned. How did the researchers actually see what was happening with dopamine in the brains of those mice? That sounds like science fiction.
You're right. The techniques they used are pretty mind-blowing. Let's start with how they labeled those brain cells in the first place. They use a technique called optogenetics, where they essentially inserted a special gene into specific neurons in the mice's brains. This gene makes those neurons sensitive to light, so the researchers could literally switch them on or off by shining a tiny laser beam.
Wait, so they're controlling brain cells with lasers. That sounds like something out of a superhero movie.
It does sound futuristic, doesn't it? But that's the beauty of modern neuroscience. This technique allows us to target incredibly specific brain circuits with amazing precision.
Okay, so they can activate those neurons with light. How does that help them understand dopamine's role?
Well, remember how the mice learned to associate the bell with the sweet treat? When they recall that memory, certain neurons in a brain region called the amygdala become active, the researchers could identify those specific neurons using optogenetics.
The amygdala, that's the part of the brain involved in emotions, right?
Yeah?
Especially fear in that fight or flight response.
You got it. So they've pinpointed these memory-related neurons in the amygdala. What next? Here's where things get really clever. They combined optogenetics with another technique that allows them to measure dopamine release in real time. So they can activate those specific neurons with light and simultaneously see how much dopamine is being released in that area.
So they're basically watching dopamine in action in real time,
Mm.
tied to those specific memories. That's incredible.
It is, and when they compare the dopamine levels before and after the mediated devaluation, they saw a significant decrease in dopamine release when the mice recalled the memory of the sweet treat.
So they're literally seeing dopamine levels drop as the memory of the reward becomes less appealing. It's like watching the brain rewrite its own rule book on what's pleasurable.
Exactly. And remember how I mentioned computational modeling? Well, they created a model that simulates this whole process, taking into account dopamine's role in memory and valuation. The model's predictions matched the experimental results almost perfectly.
So it's not just one study. It's corroborated by this whole other layer of analysis. That's a pretty strong case for dopamine being a major player in how we reshape our memories of rewards.
It is, and it challenges that traditional view of dopamine being solely about predicting rewards. We're now seeing it involved in a much more complex interplay with memories and emotions.
This has to have huge implications for how we understand addiction, right? I mean, if dopamine can actually devalue memories of rewards, could that help us develop new treatments? Imagine being able to target those harmful memories and reduce the power of cravings.
That's precisely what researchers are excited about. This study opens up a whole new avenue for potential therapies. If we can understand the mechanisms by which dopamine modifies these memories, we might be able to develop targeted interventions.
It's like we're learning how to reprogram the brain to break those unhealthy associations. It's mind-boggling to think we could manipulate memories at this level.
Well, it's not quite that simple. The brain is incredibly complex, and we're still in the early stages of understanding this process. But the potential is definitely there.
I'm curious, beyond addiction, what other conditions might this research shed light on?
Well, think about any condition where negative thought patterns or memories play a role. Depression, anxiety, even post-traumatic stress disorder. If we can understand how dopamine contributes to the formation and persistence of these negative memories, we might be able to develop new therapies to disrupt those patterns.
This is really groundbreaking stuff. It feels like we're on the verge of a whole new understanding of how our brains work and how we might be able to help people suffering from a wide range of conditions.
It's definitely an exciting time in neuroscience, and this is just one study. Imagine what other discoveries are waiting to be made.
Okay, let's bring this back down to earth for a minute. What does this all mean for us non-mice folks in our daily lives? Are we all just slaves to our dopamine-driven memories?
Not necessarily. While this research highlights the powerful role dopamine plays in shaping our memories and behavior, it also offers a sense of agency. We're not simply at the mercy of our brain chemistry.
So how can we use this knowledge to our advantage?
Well, for starters, being aware of how dopamine can influence our memories is a powerful tool. Knowing that our cravings and desires might be driven by dopamine-enhanced memories allows us to question those urges.
So next time I find myself craving that extra slice of pizza, even though I know it's not the healthiest choice, I should pause and consider whether it's genuine hunger or just dopamine replaying memories of cheesy goodness.
Exactly. Becoming more mindful of those dopamine-driven impulses gives us the opportunity to make more conscious decisions. We can choose to engage in activities that promote genuine well-being rather than simply chasing fleeting dopamine hits.
This is a lot to take in, but I'm feeling strangely optimistic. It's like we're gaining a superpower, the ability to understand and potentially even control these intricate brain processes.
In a way, yes. We're starting to see the brain not as a fixed entity, but as a dynamic system that we can learn to influence through our choices and experiences.
So we're not just passengers on this dopamine-fueled joyride. We can actually take the wheel and steer ourselves towards a more fulfilling life.
Exactly, and that's what makes this research so exciting. It's not just about understanding the brain, it's about empowering ourselves to live better lives.
Well, on that inspiring note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I have one final question for you. If our memories of rewards can be so easily manipulated by this like tiny chemical, what does that mean for our perception of reality? I mean, how much of what we think we want is actually just our dopamine rewired memories, pulling the strings?
That's a great question. And it really gets to the heart of this whole discussion. This research challenges us to reconsider the very nature of our desires and motivations.
It's almost like we're living in a dopamine-tinted world where our memories are constantly being reshaped, and our cravings might not even reflect our true needs.
It's a fascinating idea, isn't it? And it highlights the importance of becoming more aware of these subtle influences on our decision making.
So it's not about like eliminating dopamine or becoming emotionless robots or anything like that. It's about understanding how this powerful chemical shapes our experiences and using that knowledge to make more conscious choices.
Precisely. We can learn to recognize those dopamine-driven urges for what they are and make decisions that align with our long-term goals, rather than simply chasing those fleeting rewards.
This reminds me of something I read about mindfulness practices. The idea is to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment, recognizing that they're not always an accurate reflection of reality.
That's a great connection. And it ties into what we've been discussing about dopamine. By cultivating a sense of mindfulness, we can become more aware of those dopamine-driven impulses and choose not to be swept away by them.
So it's not about suppressing those cravings or denying ourselves pleasure. It's about creating a space between the urge and the action, allowing us to make a more conscious choice.
Exactly. And that's what empowers us to break free from those dopamine-driven loops and create a life that's aligned with our true values.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about this tiny molecule that seems to have such a profound impact on our lives.
It's been a pleasure exploring this fascinating topic with you. And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's still so much we don't know about dopamine and its role in our brains.
But one thing's for sure, this research opens up a whole new world of possibilities for understanding ourselves and potentially even improving our lives.
Absolutely. And that's what makes neuroscience so exciting. It's not just about unraveling the mysteries of the brain. It's about using that knowledge to empower ourselves and create a better future.
Well, on that note, I think we'll leave our listeners with this final thought. If dopamine can so profoundly shape our memories and desires, what does that mean for our sense of free will? It's something to ponder as you go about your day.
Indeed. It's a question that philosophers and scientists have been grappling with for centuries. And this research adds another layer of complexity to the debate.
But perhaps that's the beauty of it. The more we learn about the brain, the more we realize how much there is still to discover. And that journey of exploration, I think, is what makes life so fascinating.
I couldn't agree more. The quest for knowledge is an endless adventure, and I, for one, am eager to see where it leads us next.
Well said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of dopamine. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those brains buzzing.